welcome to another video of Med to MD. Of course, you have me, Aliah, and
Tina.
And we have a very special guest with us today that we love to introduce, and her name is Ateh Fonteh. And she's my sister, so I'm really excited that she's going to be on our video today. Today, we're going to be talking about the, drum roll please, MCAT.
Yeah.
So, Tina, do you want to kind of give us an outline of what we're going to talk about today?
For sure. So today, we kind of want to talk about our experience with the MCAT, and then we invited Ateh here today because she recently took the MCAT, and it's been a few years since Aliah and I have taken it, so we might not be able to answer the questions, and especially in terms of the recent times and it's the influence of COVID on the MCAT. So overall, our video today is, again, just going to consist of our experience writing it, lessons we've learned, things we would have done differently if we had to write it again. And then we have some amazing tips from Ateh here for you today.
Yay.
So let's get started.
Yeah, my name is Ateh, and I am currently still in undergrad. I go to the University of Chicago, and I am in my 4th year, so I'm about to graduate in a few months.
Thanks, Ateh. Congrats. Very proud of you. And my name is Aliah, and I go to school in Tennessee at Meharry Medical College. I'm a 2nd year, rising 3rd year med student.
And I'm Tina Chatterjee again, and I also go to Meharry Medical College, 2nd year / 3rd year, and I'm doing my psychiatry rotation right now.
Yes, I'm on internal med right now.
So first of all, I guess, Ateh, what was your experience you could share with us writing the MCAT? Because you did it last year, you mentioned.
So it was an interesting progression for me because I took it when the pandemic was starting. So I was supposed to take it in March, and then I got canceled, and then I rescheduled for, I think, like May or April, and I got canceled again, and then I had to reschedule for June, end of June, and I finally got to take it. Honestly, it was like a shortened version because we were in a test center with, they had to try and squeeze everyone in into smaller amounts of time. And so I took it from 6 p.m. to midnight-ish, and it was a shortened test, but honestly, in the moment, I only practiced for full-length tests. I never took like the COVID short ones, and it felt exactly like a full-length one. I think the most interesting thing about the whole experience was the timing one, having to take it so late throughout the day. And then also the fact that, I was studying for this and trying to prepare for all of this while a lot was going on in the world. And that made the whole experience a little challenging.
Yeah, I can imagine that was extremely hard. And I don't envy you taking an exam at 6 p.m. that is like going to be a determinant or a factor determinant in your application to med school. So very proud of you for, how it ended up happening for you or going for you. How did you say that? How did you feel like that day was for you? Like, I know it was late, but like, did you have snack breaks that you took? Like, how was everything? Can you explain what you meant by like abbreviated test time?
Right, yeah. So basically they cut down the questions. I think they took 10 questions off of each section approximately. And so they still gave us breaks, but from what I understand, during the normal, like the pre-COVID one, you would have like a sort of longer break, and we didn't have that. We just had a couple like 5 to 10 minute breaks, I think maybe 10-minute breaks between some sections. So I was able to go out and get a snack, but honestly, for me, it was so late at night, and I had spent the day like preparing. I like took naps. I ate full meals. By the time I was at this test, I did not feel like taking an extended eating break anyways. So what I ended up doing was, I took like one snack break, and then I was like, let me just get through these sections. I don't need any more breaks. I'm tired. But yeah.
You powered through that exam. Wow, that's incredible. How did you feel when the exam was over? Like, that's the moment of truth right there.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, when the exam was over, I cried. I called my mother and I cried and I said that was horrible. And I
All
sat
her
in that.
reactions.
Yeah, I sat in that lonely building. It was so late at night. I called my Uber. I was on the phone with them crying, my mom and my dad. And yeah, that was my reaction.
I don't remember my reaction, but Tina, what was your reaction when you took yours?
So I took the MCAT twice. I wrote it like earlier in the day, and it was a very long day. So by the time I came out, honestly, I was drained. I didn't have any emotion. I just had the worst headache ever. And so after that was the first time. The second time, same thing happened. No emotion at all. I was just very well. Actually, the second time. After I took the MCAT, I felt a bit scared because it was the second time. Like, I started worrying about my score immediately. And yeah, I called my parents. They were coming to pick me up, and immediately as I got out, I called my mom, and I think I sounded sort of teary. Again, was just scared about my score right when I was walking out. But I just had the worst headache ever. It was insane. So that was my.
I think it's important to note that despite what this sounds like and us coming out crying and stressed, from what I understand, everyone comes out feeling like that. It's just it's a long test. It's hard to come out of any test feeling 100% confident. And because the stakes in this one are so high, it's just like an emotional thing. It doesn't mean that this test will completely drain you of everything, but it's a hard situation.
A big factor that does influence like your reaction or your state after you take the test, and even like your score, is how well you train yourself just to sit there in one spot for so long.
I guess for me, I don't remember being teary-eyed either time. And I also took it twice. The first time was horrible in the sense of like when I got my score, it was horrible. And that was a wake-up call for me, like, I can't apply to med school with this score. And I'm smiling now. I'm obviously a med student, so things ended up going well. So all that to say that just because you might not have received a score you wanted the first time doesn't mean you can't try again. And so I did I took the exam the first time while I was a senior in college, and it didn't go well because I didn't prepare well. And I just thought that, I'm a biomedical sciences major and I should know all the stuff that are on the test and I'll do well. That was a fallacy. Then I decided to really be intentional in my master's program about like really understanding like the physiology, anatomy, all of this stuff that would be helpful for me when I like sat down to study that summer for the exam. And I studied about 6 to 8 weeks. I can't remember exactly. And we'll talk more about our schedule shortly, but I took it a second time and I had a 13-point increase. And it was good for me because it made me a more competitive than I was the first time around. And so I felt comfortable to go ahead and apply to med school with that score. And I will say that when I got out of the test the second time, I was relieved. I drove home and I went for a good walk and I talked to a friend on the phone. I mean, I think my nerves kind of settled in like a month later when I knew the score was going to come out was when I started freaking out versus like when I had taken it. I was kind of just grateful because I had driven to the testing center. I like prayed and I was like, okay, Lord, take this. And then I like went home and then I came the next day and took the test, and I had seen a friend who was also taking it the same day. So I felt like my nerves calmed down. I was like, yeah, we're all in this together type mentality. And then, it ended up being better than, I thought. So.
Okay, so now we sort of want to talk about what the MCAT really is, what sections it has, how many questions, what like the day sort of looks like. So Ateh, you want to give us like a little bit of the details?
So the medical college admissions test, aka the MCAT, has 4 sections. It has the chem physics section, It has cars, which is like a critical analysis and reasoning section. It has a biology / biochem section, and then it has a psychology and sociology section. And in all of those sections, except for cars, there are 59 questions. In cars, there are only 53. And the timing between all those sections is pretty consistent. I think the time for cars is different because of the difference in questions. For the most part, what you see is in the science sections and then the psychology, sociology section, you're going to see essay-based questions. So you'll have like a passage, and based on that passage, you'll have maybe like 5 at the max, sometimes somewhere between 3 and 5 questions on that passage. Sometimes it's asking you to make a calculation. Sometimes it's asking you to infer something or think of a certain scientific concept or something that you should know. And then you also have discrete questions within those sections. So that would just be like no passage associated. If it was like a biology question, they could just ask you, what type of muscle do you use when you're, I don't know, working out? That's a very bad question example, but my point is that you have like these discrete questions, and then it's of course it's all multiple choice, and you would just pick whatever goes along with that.
What about the breaks? Can you talk about that? How are the breaks factored in? Like if you remember it all.
Okay, yes. So I like vaguely remember. I don't want to get this wrong, but from what I remember with the practice test, it's between the first and normally it's spaced out. You start off with your chem and physics section. So between that one and cars, which is the second section, that's when you have like a 10-minute break. And then between cars and the biochem section, that's when you would have your longer like lunch break. If they're doing the normally spaced out test, not the COVID test, you would have your lunch break. So that's like 30 minutes. And then between your biochem section and your psychology and sociology section, you would have another shorter break. And then that's the last section, and you get to go home. Well, actually, they ask you, the dialogue box pops up, and it says, would you like to count this towards like your final score? Or do you want them to score this MCAT test? And you have to sit there and say yes, because what other choice do you have? You just spent 8 hours on this test. But yeah.
I remember, I guess some other things that we can briefly mention are like the policies of that day. Like don't bring any testing material. Like that should be something that you keep in mind. Like keep all your testing material at home. I think most sites have like a locker for you to put your like lunch and water bottles in. But yeah, you are gonna go through a little like security thing because they're gonna fingerprint you, and they're gonna make sure you have your driver's license. Like they want to make sure that you are there and being authentic. Like if you wear glasses, like you're gonna have to take those off and have them look at it. Like this is not a no cheating zone. Like you are gonna go in there with integrity.
They make you take off your scarf. I showed up with my scarf and she said you got to take that down. I was like, oh no. Because my hair did not look good underneath that. So that was interesting. Come with a long sleeve shirt on, because my person was a little nice about it, but they don't let you wear jackets in there. You have to leave your jacket in the locker. And the room could be really hot or really cold. I was somewhere in between the whole time. So wearing like a loose fitting long sleeve shirt is probably the best way to go. So you're not overheated, but you're also not cold.
And they give you earplugs and stuff too, like those ones. And then, because I think I brought my own, and they're like, "No, you can't use that.
You can't bring that." Yeah, I think they give you. The ones that you just like put into your ear. And I think I used it. So the first time, when I wrote it the first time, I think everyone that was in the building, they were writing the MCAT. But the second time I took it, there were people writing some other tests. So I think they had some typing component or like some essay component, and all I could hear was the typing. So definitely use those earbuds. It can get very distracting, especially when you're on a time constraint.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm glad you brought that up, Tina, because like they gave me the earbuds and I could still hear the person next to me taking an exam typing. So like just keep in mind that whatever testing center you go to, there may be someone taking a different test that's not the MCAT that requires them to do a lot of typing. Like you just might need to just know that it might not be the most quiet. Even with those on, I could still hear. And I was so frustrated. It was like, I was so mad.
And for those of you taking this during the pandemic, wear your most breathable mask, because when you're feeling frustrated from all of that, you're going to want to take some deep breaths. And I was struggling to do that because I just wore any mask. I was not thinking about how I needed to keep this on for such a long period of time. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had to press down on my earbuds. Like, I don't want to hear you typing.
So bringing that up actually brought some not deja vu, but brought a flashback for me that I actually did cry that day of the second test. It was during the test. I was like, this test is hard. And and I did cry, and then I had to like pick my head back up and keep doing the test. So I take back what I said before. I did cry during the test.
We will put down the website from for the AAMC MCAT description so that you guys can go check that out. And I think it is very important to actually look at that, because we at least I don't remember all of the like break times, how long they were. And I think that the AAMC website gives a very good description, overview of what the MCAT really is. Definitely utilize that resource. And I think I'm not sure if you guys used it, but the AAMC also goes over what exactly topics are on the MCAT. Even if you have a strong science background, it's important to know exactly like what concepts that you'll encounter. And yeah, the CAR section, it's I didn't look at the AAMC website breakdown when I was writing the MCAT, but I did check it out recently, and they do have sort of an overview describing what the CAR section is, what sorts of questions it really deals with. Like it'll, as Ateh mentioned, you get like a passage, and then you have to answer questions based on that passage. And just even from my memory, most of those questions were like, what's the author's main point, or what's the theme of the passage? There's some like evidence-based questions, some like evidence from the passage that will support point X on the question. So there's similar questions. And if you can sort of just figure out what the question is asking for, then it's not that difficult to just pick out those points. The difficult part is the time constraint. Yeah.
And that's where practice comes in.
Exactly.
And since you're talking about AAMC, like, please look at their packages that they have where they offer opportunities to do full length tests, and where you can also purchase like question packs from them and do like the questions. They're the ones who make the MCAT. So I feel like it's a great idea to invest in the AAMC practice test and the AAMC practice questions, so you get a style of how these authors write and like the type of questions that you might see for the various sections.
We now want to talk about how we prepared overall for the MCAT. So like overall, what were all of the resources we used, and then what's the one that we found the most beneficial to us?
So my MCAT study journey started the summer after my second year in college, and I bought the full set of the Kaplan books, and I started reading and annotating each section just to get like a general. My goal was to read through all the books and like have an understanding of every section before I started taking practice tests. And it took me months to read through all of that and like have any type of concise notes and annotations. And honestly, I can say now that that was a complete waste of time. There was no need for me to do any of that. I barely ended up looking through those notes in the end. I mean, no, just not a good thing to do. What I also brought was, I bought the AAMC packet. So their online questions, their practice tests, and then their physical note cards. I bought the MCAT Bros. They have this guide to the psych soc section. They have like a 300-page one and 100-page one. They have it all online for free, but you can also buy and like have them ship you a physical copy. And I'm the type of person who likes to like physically write things down and annotate. So I bought the physical copy, and that was really, really helpful. So the MCAT Bros Psych Soc guide is essential. It is important. It's one of the best things I did. I scored very, very well on that section on the MCAT, and it is probably solely because of that. In the 2 weeks leading up to my exam, I read that, I reread it, I annotated it, I re-annotated it. I basically had it memorized, and no question on that section was a surprise. It was like simple. I was like, fantastic, amazing. What else did I do? Okay, so I had all those books, but then I was like, I need to get into some online resources. Around December, December is when I took my first, December after that summer was when I took my first practice test. And at that time, I was planning on taking my first test in January. So that was already a little late. Did horrible on that first practice test. Was not good, wasn't great. Hadn't broken 500, was not feeling very confident, and I rescheduled my test. But at that point, I was still focusing on doing the Kaplan books, trying to read, and that just wasn't the best method of studying. But that took me a while to realize. When I rescheduled to March, I started to try and transition to taking practice tests like once every 4 weeks, just so I could test my progress. And like I slowly but surely started to see my progress. And then my test was rescheduled, which because of the pandemic, which threw things off a little. And I think it ended up being a good thing for me because I found new ways to study, and I had more time to figure out what I needed to do for the MCAT. And I was able to get a UWorld suspended. And it's pretty helpful. It has just like a bunch of practice questions, and getting UWorld is when I really started to transition from trying to read these Kaplan books and memorize every little minuscule detail to practice questions, which I think is the best way to study. So I did UWorld practice questions a lot. When you buy the Kaplan books, it comes with an online resource, and it comes with Kaplan practice tests. So I started doing their online questions, and they also had videos that I would watch. I also got really into the Khan Academy MCAT videos. I think I'm a visual learner, so it just helped me to not have to like try and read everything, but to just hear people explain things to me. Before the pandemic started, I would be at work and I would be listening to Khan Academy MCAT videos. I would just have the playlists on. And just going, and I would listen to everything that they were saying. But I also use resources that I had used when I was studying in previous classes. So channels like, oh, I'm forgetting his name, but there are some really great channels for organic chemistry and biochemistry on YouTube. And I use those to like help me remember different mechanisms and important key concepts. You can also find like in the Kaplan books, it sort of tells you what things are heavily weighted. And you can sort of use that as a guide for what you should really know. But at the same time, once you started taking a good amount of practice tests, you start to notice the things that you really, really need to know. And I think around March, because I expected my test to be in May, I got a schedule where I was taking a new practice test every 2 weeks. And then leading up closer to the test, I started taking a practice test every week. Because my test got rescheduled again to June, I had a little extra time. So I just kept taking the practice test. And there got to a point where what I would do is you don't want to just take the practice test and move on. That is the worst thing you can do. I would take a practice test on a Saturday, and then on the Sunday, I would spend all day in practice test review. And the way I did this was I had an Excel spreadsheet that was broken up into each section of the MCAT. And then I would review every question that I had done, and I would look at it and I would say, okay, I knew this and I got the answer correct, so I can move on. I don't need to put it in the spreadsheet. But for the ones that I got incorrect in the spreadsheet, I would type out what the correct answer was and why. I would put in why the answer I put was incorrect. And for the other answer choices, especially if it's something that I might have picked, I would also write out why those were incorrect. And for questions that I had guessed on, I would do the same. And then during the week, I would study that spreadsheet. If you make the spreadsheet correctly, it's not just like, what is this one talking about? What was I writing here? It should make sense to you. You should be able to say, oh, I was talking about this cycle. This is what goes into the cycle, and this is why you should answer this if you see a question similar. And so I think in total, I might have taken like 11 practice tests leading up to my actual tests. And I would go through those spreadsheets so many times. It would be like, okay, I'm going to go through spreadsheet 2 and 3 today and just see which ones I got wrong a lot. And after a while, there's a lot of, I mean, obviously there's a lot of material covered on the MCAT, but at the same time, there's a finite amount of things that they can test, and there are topics that they test on a lot. So after a while, you start to see like, okay, I remember this from practice test 2 and 3. Good thing I reviewed my spreadsheet. This is fantastic. So I think that was also another really great resource, being able to do that. And then in total, just practice questions, practice tests. I wish I had spent more time on the AAMC practice questions. They have a lot of good ones, and I went through them once, and then I went through the CARS passages twice. And yeah, I wish I had spent a little more time on the AAMC offered questions and a little less time on the Kaplan questions. Not that the Kaplan questions aren't okay, it's just that I think that as far as like accuracy, UWorld and AAMC were the most accurate, and they were like probably the most beneficial for me. I also had, well, I wanted to improve my CARS score as I got closer to the test. So I was taking the, I took Jack Weston is a website, and he has MCAT prep, and he does a CARS question passage of the day. And sometimes you're like, are you serious? He does make them himself, but they're actually pretty helpful. And it just gets you in the practice of, okay, even if you get in the practice of how do I have to think for a CARS passage. So I definitely recommend doing Jack Weston. Just do his one passage a day, and you'll start to see like some changes and improvement. And it really helps you with your timing, because with CARS, timing can be very important. I'm sorry, I did so many things. I think the last thing that I'll mention is when I got the AAMC packet, I had the note cards that were in person, and the note cards are basically multiple choice questions, and it's just additional practice questions. So they're divided by color per section, and every day I would go through one color, because that was just a simple way to do that throughout the day. Oh, wait, last thing. Okay. And then especially towards the end of the test, you know the things you're messing up on. So I got my notebook of topics that I was messing up on. And so in that notebook, I outlined the things that I just was having trouble remembering. It had notes on, it was normally like chemistry things and different equations from physics that you need to know, things like that. And so it was only like maybe 10 pages of notes total. So every day before bed, after a long day of practice questions or whatever, I could open that notebook and see all the topics that I normally don't do well on and just review them quickly. So I had them on my mind. Okay, I'm sorry. That was so much, but I think that's everything I did.
You're good. That was amazing.
That information, because guess what? We are going to bug you to give us those links so we can drop it in the description box for our viewers. Everything you said shows why you did so well. Like, you really put in the work, and you really allowed yourself to ask, do I know this concept or not? If I don't, let me go back to that spreadsheet. If I don't, let me review my little 10-page cheat sheet. Like, you were consistent in the flashcards, the reviewing, the questions, the videos. I mean, it's impressive. You were watching videos at work. You immersed yourself in preparing for this exam. And I think that sometimes we forget that we can even incorporate our MCAT studying into our day-to-day lives. Like, you said that earlier, it might have been a waste of time to be starting to read those Kaplan books, but maybe if you're a pre-med and you're learning something on glycolysis and you have the book, doesn't mean it's a bad thing for you to go and look and see what the MCAT books have on glycolysis. But I really appreciated everything you shared, because I think it gives our viewers the ability to say like, hey, what can I do to incorporate my MCAT study into my schedule, even as a sophomore in college? What can I do when I get closer to the test to make sure that I'm not just like, oh, I got this wrong, but I really understand, because I'm going to see something similar again. Like, the test makers, you learn their style after some time. So I really appreciate that, you took time to share all these resources. And I'm gonna let Tina talk, because I know she has something to say about your advice as well.
No, thank you so much, Ateh, for sharing all of that. And I really liked how you focused on like what you needed to improve on, because that is definitely something that I did not do even both times when I was preparing for the MCAT.